Yo lo voy a usar para mis clases.
De hecho, había hartos charlas que se ven desde afuera, lo que había sido bien visto, el de Gonzalo Bus, por ejemplo. Me acuerdo que había sido mucho por Estados Unidos, Finlandia. Había varios, de hecho, son 72 países que están acumulados de 70 países. Chile, obviamente, es el principal, entonces, el principal. Pero había el segundo más importante era Estados Unidos.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. We are very happy to have Emerson Melo from Indiana University. So this is probably the last seminar of the semester of the year, probably. So thanks a lot for coming.
No, thank you for having me. So thank you for having me here, and I feel like at home because I know Roberto, Adriana, so and also I have seen people working on stuff that I like to do or read. So it's very useful for me. So I think I'm going to learn more from you than you from me today. So so what I'm going to present today is instead of presenting a paper, I'm going to present two applications of convex analysis in discrete choice model. Okay, and part of this talk is include work with Mogens, Fosguero, Andre de Palma, and Matt Chun from Caltech, Copenhagen, and Paris. Okay, so what is the main motivation of convex analysis? We have convex structure in modern economic theory play a central role. So you might find an example from mechanism design and decision theory to partial identification in econometrics, so how to do statistics, exploiting convex analysis tools, and also mass transportation, which is becoming more and more popular these days. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus only on two type of problem. Okay, so one is rational inattention, and I'm going to define in a few slides what do I mean by that, and discrete network game. Okay, so I'm going to study those two problems, and the main tool behind, or the main result that I'm going to exploit is the idea of convex duality in random utility model. Okay, so I'm going to take the dual of any random utility model, and I'm going to exploit that structure, and we're going to see we have a lot of payoff doing that. It's a simple observation, but it has a payoff. Okay, so so the outline, I'm going to define the idea of a additive random utility model. So I'm going to be specific about that, and how convex duality allow you to study those models. Given that definition, I'm going to define the idea of Arun and rational inattention. Okay, which is kind of a very popular topic these days in economic theory. And I hope we have time. I'm going to describe this idea of discrete network game. Again, I'm going to be exploiting this tool of convex analysis, convex duality in discrete choice, and I'm going to use variational inequalities. Okay, and finally, final remarks and extension and discussion. Okay, so let's define what is an Arun model. So we're going to have a decision maker. We're going to have n options. So you have one option to n, and you're going to have a utility for option I. It's going to be ui. It's going to be given by bi plus epsilon I. Okay, and bi is going to be a deterministic valuation. Okay, and epsilon is going to be a random utility show. Well, this is a popular framework started from McFadden started this type of model, and it's very useful. It's very popular in econ and in other fields too. Okay, now so we start defining this object, and I know Roberto knows this a lot. Define the surplus function, okay, which is expected value over the maximum of all alternatives. Okay, well, W is convex and differentiable. Okay, so that's a very nice property, being differentiable and convex, and in particular the choice probability is going to be equal to the gradient of this W function. Okay, so that's a well-known result. And in particular, and here is where convex duality plays a role. So you can say we can express the choice probability, not just the gradient of this. So we can say the following: we can have a perturbed utility problem, okay, where you're going to have the expected utility plus some term, which is, you might see this like it's a regularizer for the problem, or it's going to be here. It's going to be the convex the convex conjugate of W. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so the choice probability vector, it can be written like the gradient of W, or in an equivalent way as the solution of this optimization problem. Okay, now that's a first observation. So the next question is, can you say something about W star? Okay, so we know how to express W, but W star we don't know much. Okay.
Shouldn't it be a minus? There, minus W star?
It's minus, yeah. Or we can, it's minus. Okay, so so when I have the surplus function for the logit model, for example, this is a well-known case and very studied in problems like this. So W is going to be the log sum formula. Okay, and the convex conjugate is going to be the Q times log Q formula, which is to some extent a Shannon entropy at the end of the day. Okay, and you can use this idea of the Williams-Daly-Zachary theorem, and you know the gradient of W gives you the choice probability, and also you can write down the perturber utility problem, and then you're going to have the same choice probability. Okay, so this is well known. Okay, so then the next question is, so our problem here is that perturber utility. We know for the particular case of logit how to express it. Okay, now can we say something like this for a general class of additive random utility model? Okay, and here is where we propose one way. We say consider any room. Okay, define a vector value function h. This is a definition, so that's the starting point for us. When I say that's going to be h of the a to the b, it's going to be the gradient of this exponential of the surplus function. Okay, and then the function h is globally invertible. You can prove that in this type of problem, but that's our definition. Okay. Now, what we can show is that with that definition, we have a long sum like formula. Okay, when h is just the identity, it's going to give you the logit formula, or for the log sum formula for the logit, and then W. Here is the interesting part. W star can be expressed as Q times log of S of Q. Okay, so so S is going to be a nonlinear function in general. And if it's the identity, we recover the logit model. Okay. Now we can use that W. We can express the choice probability as a perturber utility problem. Okay. So now we have this expected utility minus this entropic term, the idea. Okay. And we call this a generalized entropy term. Okay. So it is in the sense of it looks like an entropy, but we are not using the axiomatic derivation of the entropy. Okay, so in that sense, it has the form, the expression as an entropy. Okay, now choice probability has a logit type formula too. Okay, which is given by this Qi is going to be given by this expression, which is pretty much of formula. Okay, so defining this this function h for us. Okay. So that's okay. Now there is this is the main object that we are going to exploit in these two type of problems that I discussed at the beginning. There's a key question here. So how you find the h function, and that's going to be case by case. For example, logit for the nested logit, order probit, things like that. We can have some formulas, but in general, we have some gain in how we express this W star. We cannot have this nice formula for the logit, for example. So it's a concrete formula for any rune. It's going to depend case by case. Okay, but that formula allows me to start discussing this problem of rational inattention. In this model, we have a agent who has a stochastic choice rule. Okay, but he knows everything about the okay, so we're not ruling out that the agent is fully informed about each possible characteristic of this alternative. Okay, so we only add this the Lonai to motivate unobserved heterogeneity among consumers, for example. But we are imposing that the BI is known for each possible I for a problem. Now, so rational inattention try to have a weaker statement than that. So the idea is the following. So you are an agent who doesn't have full information about the BIs. You might observe some state of the world, okay? And then there is a probability distribution over different profile of B, okay? And then you try to learn about that state, okay? And you process information in your decision process, okay? Now, so what rational attention tries to model is the idea of how informed is the agent subject to information cost. So you have to pay a cost when you try to acquire information in this model. The logic doesn't incorporate that, for example. The logic is you have some randomness, but there is no caution in the alternative. Okay. For example, if you consider in transportation, we have an stochastic choice rule. We assume that the deterministic component, we know how to compute that. So here, we are trying to weak that type of assumption. Okay. We're going to focus in how to model the information cost. Okay. So the one way, and that's straightforward, is using Shannon entropy, and then you're going to have a formula for the information cost. That's going to be the logic model with rational inattention. Okay. Now we are going to propose. Okay, you can do that for any rune, and that's allow you to say things like this, for example. So any rune can be derived from the idea of they are not fully aware about all alternative attributes, for example. Okay, and also you allow for something that is not allowed in the standard random utility model is you can have a choice probability equal to 0. So some alternative might be chosen with probability 0. So we don't in the standard room you rule out that with you incorporate information cost. You have a way to deal with that, okay? And you generate this consideration set idea. Okay. Now the model out there in connecting rational inattention and discrete choice is the logic model, and that's the most popular model out there. And the problem is, so you're going to impose to some extent some unrealistic substitutability pattern across choices. Okay, and also if you are for example, the main idea here is how can you apply this model if you're an empirical person? Okay, so we would like to we know how to do random utility for in general non-parametric or for nested logic, cross nested logic, things like that. How can you push this idea of rational attention to the entire class of Arun model? Okay, and we can allow for example, complementarity among alternative, which is something you don't allow in the standard logic. Okay. So we in the paper when we wrote this model, we propose it's not a real example. It's something that you might observe in data. So suppose you have two states. So that idea of rational inattention, you don't know the B for sure. So you have states. Okay. Suppose you have only two states, and you have pineapple, mango, and cheesecake. Okay. And suppose these are the B1 are the, you want to call it like these valuations in the state 1, and in the state 2 you're going to have another vector of valuation. Okay. Now between 1 and 2, the only difference is the first component goes down. Okay. Now for example, you might have a higher price in that good. Now suppose you have these probabilities in the state 1, we're asking, suppose you have this pattern in the data. Okay, in the state 1 you have this, and in state 2 you have these choice probabilities. Okay, now the odd, in this case, the odd ratio between mango and cheesecake increased from 0.59, okay, in state 1 to 0.67 in state 2. Okay, so it's realistic as higher price for pineapple cause asymmetric substitution among these other two goods. Okay, so what happened in the standard logic model, for example? What will be the implication of a standard logic? You rule out that. Okay, Even in the case of rational inattention, you still are ruling out that. We didn't include, I didn't include that data, but even if you compute, I don't know, scaling data for some item, you might generate this example with real data. If you apply Shannon and rational inattention ideas, you cannot justify this, okay? So then the question is, what about if you can derive an equivalent between a rational inattention model and the Arun class? So give me data, I'm going to be able to rationalize all this choice probability in terms of a rational inattention model or vice versa. Give me a rational inattention model, I can see that I can tell you there is a model going on here, okay? Now, what we show is an equivalent for an entire class of additive random utility model, okay? And essentially what we're going to do, we're going to exploit that formula for the generalized entropy we have. Then we're going to have a cost function, and then we're going to be able to generate particular model and generate particular pattern in choice, okay? So there are two byproducts here. So one is we propose a new cost function for this problem, and if you go to the literature on rational inattention, the main business is how you propose a cost function, which is with some good properties. So one coming from this random utility, but at the same time, we have a foundation based on utility for Arun. So that's the relevance of the equivalence that we have. Okay, and also you are able to increase the descriptive scope of this type of model. Okay, essentially that's what is going on. And for applied people, this is useful for experimental and field work. Okay, and this is something that is out there. Complementarity is a big issue in discrete choice model, in random utility in particular. Random utility is built upon the substitutability assumption, so or regularity. So you increase the utility of one good, the probability is the choice probability of every other good goes down. So that's the substitutability. Here we increase the utility of one good, and we have some complementarity. So at the same time, the probability of two good can go up. So that's something that is not allowed in the standard theory. Now, so let me it's a brief description of discrete choice and rational inattention here. So the decision maker has an option. Okay, we're going to have a payoff B. Okay. Now, the difference I've been talking is the vector payoff is unobserved by the decision maker. Okay, so the decision maker consider payoff vector B is a random variable now. It's also random. Okay, and you're gonna, given the state, you make a decision. That's going to be the dynamic of this. Now, the decision maker has a prior node B, so we're gonna have mu of B is the probability that we are at state B. Okay, this you're going to say the agent are random utility decision maker. Now, let me go back here. So what this theory does is, so BI in that theory. Yeah, in that theory, you know BI.
Yeah, but that's why it's random.
Yeah.
So let's call it.
Yep, it's
UI.
that's a shock. It's a preference shock. It's a preference shock. Right?
The difference.
Yeah, you know UI.
Then you choose the best.
Yep. So here.
You observe.
Mm-hmm.
Then you choose the best.
Okay.
If
In
you
the
go
new model, you don't.
Can you go one forward?
In the new model, you.
Yep.
don't-
Here.
You take the expectation of the maximum.
Yep.
You observe the animal.
Yep.
Everything. Choose the best.
No, you choose in terms of probabilities. You don't know the actual outcome. Right?
Yeah. Then you're asking, the epsilons are random.
Yep.
Okay? You observe epsilon I, you choose the maximum utility.
Yep.
After I thought it
Yep.
was based on the probabilities.
No.
No.
You observe epsilon I and you choose.
Okay.
Then there is some probability that you will
Yep.
choose this or that. Because differentiation
Yep.
you will choose this or that.
Okay.
These are the probabilities you
So
have.
now in the new setting,
The
that's
new setting-
We allow for BI.
is also okay.
So you have different state, and you want to vector QI.
I see.
Make sense? Okay. Okay, I was here. So because of that, because the vector B is a random variable introducing a state of the world, so we are going to have a prior, okay? And for this set of slides, in the case of zero choice probability, just for simplicity and for time consideration. But at the end of the day, what you are able to write down is the following. So consider PIB, the probability I, conditional on the state B. Okay? So that's going. Starting here from the standard rational attention problem. So what this approach does, you're going to choose a collection of PIs, okay, where you are going to maximize the spectrum. The choice probability you have at each state minus an information cost. Okay? To the constraint that for each B, the vector is non-negative and up to 1. Okay? Now, here is the entire this entire set of paper discussing how you model the information cost. Okay? So some people go to the dynamic case, acquire information over time. We only consider the static case here. And by far, the most popular information cost is the Shannon entropy. Okay? And here what we do is the following. So we're going to have an unconditional set of probabilities, okay, which is just conditional choice probability, and you're going to integrate over the state, and you're going to define P, okay? You're going to have the entropy between, or the reduction in entropy between this Shannon part and also this one. This is the conditional choice probability. When you are learning, these are the probability you will choose when you are processing all the information. Yep.
So P0 and P of B are vectors, right?
Yep. Yeah.
They're only in the sequence.
Yeah, in the simplex. Yep.
There are finitely many possibilities for the phi.
It's a finite set of state. Okay. For example, in the discrete choice, you have only one state, and that's all. And this is the extension of how the motivation is. If you allow for only one state, it's because you are able to you process all the information you need to know about the B's. So here, okay. Now, for example, in this case, we solve this problem where we have the expected payoff minus the information. We write the problem like this term, which is an expected payoff, where you are shifting the B's by this log minus the Shannon entropy, okay, and then you multiply by the probability of that state. Now, in that case, we have this logit formula, which is exactly as before, but the only difference, we have this new term. Okay. Now, that's the term is coming from processing information. Okay. Now, I mentioned, for example, what are the different, besides the difference between the logit model and this rational attention approach. So you can have zero choice probability. Okay. And let me tell you how. Well, the PI0 could be 0, and then in that case, the choice probability of I will be 0. So you can generate those cases. Now, this is the most popular model. You can do econometric with this model. You can do even work. Some people have some axiomatic foundation for this, and with cost of processing information argument for the logit model. Okay. For example, in transportation, people are using this to choose the path in a transportation network. Mogens is doing that, essentially. Okay. Now, we propose this idea of the Gehry model, which is a generalized entropy rational attention model. It's a long name. And the insight is very simple. So here we only are using the idea of writing down for each state, we're writing down a random utility model. Okay. And then we can mimic this idea, okay, for this cost function, the generalized entropy cost function. We're using like a reduced form. So given some process, we're going to use this cost function in this problem. Define then a problem where we replace the modal entropy by this generalized entropy cost, mimic exactly every argument as before. Which is exactly the purple problem as in the case of Shannon, and then we can solve for in the paper we had proposition 6, which essentially okay, given this state, we're going to have this choice probability for each state, which is essentially coming from convex duality argument. Okay, I'll tell you, for example, of having this expression, the definition of H. We are able to write down these probabilities. Now, what is going on? Each generalized entropy implies a corresponding Arun. That's what we did at the beginning. Then each generalized entropy rational attention model with an information cost is going to correspond to this solution too. Okay. Instead of doing it one by one, try to write down, try to compute the W star, the conjugate. Okay. So we have this idea of this problem. So P0 is going to be just the expectation of this choice probability, and this is the individual conditional choice probability for each state is going to be given by that PIB formula. Now, what I'm not telling you here is about uniqueness. Now, as you might suspect, this is a very ugly function because we don't have to, other than that, it's the inverse of H, right? So in general, uniqueness is really hard to prove. For the logit case, it's straightforward. For the nested logit, you have to work harder. But for in general, we don't have a uniqueness result for all possible cost function. Okay. Now, that's if you look at this, it's really hard to impose or without extra sample. Uniqueness is not going to be an easy task in general. Okay. So this is the idea. This is the result we have with Andrea and Matt. Is for every Arun, which is probability QB and generator S. This definition of S function. Given a prior mu B, you can find this location chief. Essentially, what we're saying is you have B, you have this perturbation log of S. That's the chief we have. I presented this in a decision theory conference, and they were kind of they weren't happy with me when I presented. But it's essentially that's the relevant. You are saying, well, anything could happen with a rational inattention. There is nothing particular to some extent what we are saying here, but also give you light to provide some tests. Okay, and this is. 10 more minutes. Okay, here in the slides are the description of what I just put there, but I'm gonna 15. Okay, I want to skip to the next topic because I hope you can help me a little bit going on with that. But again, these two slides are essentially the description and how to go from one model to another and vice versa. If you go the nested logit, which is something that is even cross-nested logit, we can do that too. You have a closed form formula, and that case is very simple. Now, this is very popular in empirical applications. We'll allow for an equal substitution across nests and nests of choices. Here we can allow, based only on information processing, complementarity. Okay. So we generate example where for different state, when you increase the utility of one good, for example, the choice probability of both good goes up. Okay, and that's not allowed for the nested logit. And the reason is how the when you increase, for example, suppose you have you have a brand. Okay, you are Apple. Now you're improving the quality of the iPad. And then it might increase the probability you're going to buy a Mac laptop. So because to some extent it's the same brand and improving the quality of one item about the next item, and you might believe that both items are improving. That's what we're trying to say here, and other cases like that. There is an interesting property, and I didn't mention that. In Shannon entropy, what we are imposing is this idea of if you don't lose information. That's an strong assumption for economics, because what I'm trying to say, if I relabel Microsoft with Apple, it's the same, and matters here, and that's what is not captured by the standard Shannon entropy, and here we can do that. So when you relabel, you lose information. So what we're trying to do with these utilities, random utility and generalized entropy model. Okay. Now, so in the very last 2 minutes, I'm going to discuss about this idea of variational inequality and discrete network game. And again, I'm going to exploit one case, but it could be generalized to the entire class of random utility of convex duality. Okay? So the game with discrete action are applied in econometric world, but also theoretical point of view. There are many questions where you have to choose discrete options. Okay, so which product to buy, for whom to vote, and there are many other cases whether a small or not, things like that. So we can define then a game from a single agent problem to a strategic environment now. So I'm going to have n agent. So we're going to say, for simplicity, you have two alternatives, 0, 1. Okay. We're going to say the set of pure strategy or profiles, the Cartesian product of these 0, 1 sets. Okay. We're going to say x minus I is excluding player I is the profile of pure actions, and x minus ij is the set of pure actions excluding I and j. Okay. Now we can define the simplex. The simplex here is pretty simple because you have two probabilities, okay, and you can reduce the dimensionality to 1 because the simplex property, okay. And delta I is the simplex for player I, where the probabilities are denoted by pi I, okay. And again, pi minus I is the profile of all player other than I, and pi minus ij, excluding player I and j from that extra d. Now, here is the thing that I would like to incorporate. So I would like to have a network. There are many cases. For example, in social network, people, you ask people who are you supporting in this election. And you might be influenced by your neighbor or your peers in the network. So here, we're trying to capture that type of model in a strategic environment. And here, the network G captures the idea of I don't have direct connection with all people in the network, but with a subset, okay? And we're going to say the entry ij is going to be denoted by gij, where we allow for via a positive number. It could be 0, 1, that's one case, but we're going to allow for a weight, okay? G is connected. The set of links is the set of all pair where you have a positive weight, okay? And for each player, we say there is no link, there is no self loop, okay? We want to call player link neighbor. Player I neighbor, okay? And we can denote the set of neighbor as di, which is just the out degree or the in degree, depending on how you look at it. But that's the set of the number of neighbor player I has is going to be the cardinality of ni, okay? Now that's a matrix norm. You're pretty sure you're familiar with this, so I'm going to skip because how to use this in the context of this type of problem. Now, what is different with the standard game theory, here the utility depends on my own action and also the strategy being played by my neighbor. Okay, so n-person game is the complete network. Okay, so that's this and two-person game is the other extreme case. So we allow for an intermediate case. Okay, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to say the expected utility of xi given the profile pi minus I and given the network G. Okay. And then we can write down this UI, cap UI, as the expected utility, okay? Standard game theory, and Nash proved that there exists a Nash equilibrium for that type of game. Now here again, we're going to use this idea of random utility. So this is an idea that it was proposed from McCabe and Parfrey, and we use it at some point in transportation. But the idea is you allow for this unobserved heterogeneity, or people might have some shock at the moment that they're making a choice, and also you allow for playing better response, not bad responses. That's one behavioral argument, and also from a technical point of view, you allow for smooth bad responses. That's a neat property. And again, from a single agent problem, the only difference here is here you have a strategic interaction. So this deterministic component depends on what everybody else is. Okay. For example, if you use linear payoff, you can compute the probability of how your choice of 1 or 0, depending on the case. I've been talking a little bit about the role of preference shock, and I'll be, I don't want to be too much with this, but again, it's the idea of how you try to capture some behavior that is not incorporated. This is the assumption that we are going to make just to show this idea of regularizers or complex duality has a payoff. So this is not new, okay? This idea of writing down is well known, okay? It's even for learning in games has been proposed earlier, okay? But the thing here is the following. Let me define this delta, which is, let me define this delta as the maximum impact that a unilateral deviation might have on my utility for any xi, either 0 or 1, a uniform bound. Now there is an entire idea of when you have many players, you use this idea of large game or large network game. So that's delta is measuring that. In some cases, that's the order of that is 1 over n or 1 over di, being di the degree. Well, this game is a concave game, okay? Now, you can show that any Nash equilibrium of this perturber game, which is with this payoff, is a solution of this variational. It's a fixed point problem, for example. We are going to write down a variational inequality. We can compute things, but it's very powerful in computing an equilibrium problem. I did that in a context of continuous action game, and also Paris or Douglas, they did similar work. Here is the discrete case, so and using the mixed strategy case, if you want to look at that. An early work has been looking to this problem for many years, actually. Brock and Durlov, Lee and et al. 2000. They have uniqueness resolved, for example, but they exploit fixed point argument, and they have to impose linear payoff. I'm not imposing any of that, but what I can show is you have a unique equilibrium if this condition C1 is satisfied. So 2 times minus delta, the impact of unilateral deviation, and the network topology measured by the L2 norm here. Or you have a unique equilibrium if you have this other C2 condition, okay, which is just as an infinite norm, okay? Then the perturber game has a unique equilibrium. So what is behind this? Exploiting this representation of perturber payoff, you can use this idea, okay, I'm going to use F to analyze the monotonicity property of this game, which is essentially Rosen applied to a discrete game. In the first case, you have a strongly monotone operator with this parameter, okay? And in the second case, you have a uniform p-block function with this parameter, okay? Now, if you compare many papers in discrete choice and games, so most of the time what you observe is fixed point argument. So you solve this nonlinear system for the logit case, and then you try to find a contraction, essentially. So here we are exploiting monotonicity properties of the gradient of the game. Okay, so that's a different type of argument. Now, if you impose symmetry in the G, and you say, suppose the UI 0 is 0, okay, then you can improve the uniqueness condition a little bit, and instead of using this norm, you use the spectral norm, the radius norm. Now, you might ask me, which is a good question, why would you care about this uniqueness? Well, because suppose you are a policymaker and you are trying to implement, let's say, some vaccination policy, and you want to see how people are going to be influenced by peers in the decision of adopting or not the vaccine. Now, in order to make a good policy analysis, you ask in the model to have a unique equilibrium. So that's what we are looking at here. Now, does econometric estimation is simplified when you have a unique equilibrium in the data? Inference is much simpler for unique equilibrium problem. And also, if you're an experimental person, let's say you want to run a online experiment, okay? And see, for example, you're a company and you want to see how people are going to influence the consumption decision. Now, you would like to have unique equilibrium because you're able to predict exactly what is going to happen. So that's the utility. Do I have time for a couple of?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Okay. If you want to approximate exploiting this variational inequality idea, well, have an excellent approximate solution to the variational inequality, and then you can bound how far you are from the equilibrium. Okay, for example, in standard game theory, we know it's impossible to compute Nash equilibrium in general. Even approximation could be complicated. I'm being very informal, but it's a hard task from a computational point of view. And even though you might approximate in the payoff space, we don't know much what is happening in the strategic sense in terms of the profile of a strategy. Here, the variational inequality representation allow you to bound how far you are from the equilibrium. And in my view, what is interesting is depends on the topology, of course. So you have more dense network, it's going to be more complicated to compute the equilibrium or approximate the equilibrium. You have more sparse network, could be simpler. That's the idea. Okay, but this is again, this is an example where convex duality simplified the analysis a lot. Instead of using brute force argument, you can exploit this concave game representation, and then everything boils down to this. Okay, and again, if you ask me, what about other models than logit, not logit? Well, we can exploit this WI star again. We can instead of using the logit case, we can use that idea. Okay, and essentially nothing else is going to change other than this 2 and 4 number are going to be some lower bound on concavity, for example, or upper bound in concavity. It depends how you look at the sign of the gradient. Okay. Now there is. I'm going to say 1 minute because there is something that I came across and I'm trying to convince one of my students to work with me. So this idea of variational inequality and exploiting this discrete choice, duality in discrete choice model, allow you to study inverse optimization, okay? Which is a very simple idea. Suppose you have a collection of network G, G1 to Gk, and we can use this idea, okay? So we're going to define types of agents. So we're going to have clustering. So we're going to have k-means type of argument. So for each network we observe, or market, we're going to define a network of type. Okay? Then we are able to compute pi 1 to pi k as the empirical frequency of choice. Then what we can do is we can minimize in the approximated equilibrium. We are going to allow to be out of an equilibrium, but we can minimize how far I'm going to be from this epsilon variational inequality, and I'm going to minimize this subject that I have this constraint. So the frequency belongs to an equilibrium, epsilon equilibrium point, and I'm going to estimate this parameter. Now, that's something that is data-driven estimation to equilibrium problem, to discrete game, actually. So I'm not imposing any type of distribution on the shock. I can do that. And I can recover the parameter that I'm looking at, okay? And the main goal is to have some inference of epsilon and the theta 1, theta 2 hat estimator. That is something that, again, using this idea of representing this game as a concave game, you can start to use these tools. Again, if we use the standard way of studying the fixed point problem for the logic case, for example, for an equilibrium, in principle, there is no way to connect it with this type of estimation tool, for example. So that's the highlight that I'm trying to say here. Okay, and I think that's all for today. No, thank you. No, thank you. So, it was.
Not many questions, but maybe just can you go back to the slide very early when you were considering these?
Oh, okay. 9, right?
9. Yes. It's equivalent generalized rotator.
Oh, okay. That one?
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Basically, the function's age depends on the distributions of your.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And my question was, can you sort of invert? Let's say that you have your initial problem with some distribution for the noise.
Okay.
And then map them back to logic.
Okay.
and then map it forward to a logic. Would that be equivalent to, so that in the transformation,
In this,
I would be sort of,
that transformation.
yes,
Okay.
that you go, say
Um,
you start from your original distributions, then
But-
you reframe it as a logic, like just a change of, a monotone change of variable.
okay.
Is it equivalent to?
If I understand, but W depends on the shock, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're saying I have a collection of shocks?
May you go back one more
Mhm.
to the basic setting of there.
Here.
So you have your VI plus epsilon I, right?
Yep.
The epsilon I has some distribution that eventually will give you the HI.
Okay.
All of them combined.
Yeah.
The question is, can you reframe your choice instead of consider W, take a transformation to transform the VI plus epsilon I into a Humble. In
Okay.
this transformed space, you're just doing logic. So that you don't look at expected of the maximum of VI, but expected of the maximum of some inverse function. That brings you back to the standard logic.
Okay.
This would require that your distribution, I guess, that your distribution is at least absolutely continuous,
Mhm.
probably defined on full space,
Yep.
all of R.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure if this is because you're taking non-linear transformation, so
I
comes out or not. That's my,
I have to think about that. I would have big.
so, yeah, that's
Yeah. That's because it remember a little bit about the identification problem when you can rationalize. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I will tell you that logic is as general as
Yep.
anything.
Yep.
Would be equivalent.
Yep.
The next,
Yep.
okay, so you don't have a.
No, I don't. Not now. I have to think. Yeah.
And the other question was towards the last. You had these two conditions for in the
Again?
network game.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So you had one with the
Oh, okay.
spectral norm, and the other one, the other norm, and the other.
The maximum, the max row. So yeah.
So if you take a standard game, so where you have G the full graph,
Okay. Yeah. That's very demanding.
what is that? N-1?
N-1. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
In both cases?
in both cases, yes. It will have 0, 1 weights. Yeah. In that case, yep. Yep.
Both give you N-1?
Yep. Yep. That's something what we do, right? To some extent in the learning model.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
You should recover that.
But we didn't use variational inequality. That's when I learned this, I said, well, we didn't do that. Yeah. Yeah. It reduced to that.
So from a design point of view, what you should have to do is, given the network structure, you should try to limit the
Yep.
magnitude of the transfer.
Exactly. Yep.
To have uniqueness.
Exactly. So some people.
Can you do that? Other economic example where you can manipulate the G?
The network? I can change the network.
Not the G, the weights. The
Um,
impact of one player over the other.
oh yeah, you can do that. Yeah, yeah. So for example, the amount of interaction they might have may be captured by the weights and the unilateral deviation too. So how friend we are.
Yes.
So you have measure of that. Yeah. How many hours we spend online, for example.
Okay.
You have measure like that. Yeah. In that sense, that's.
So you can control that.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. Yeah.
To avoid that people connect.
No, the network is given.
The network is given. But
And-
the amount of interaction you can control.
Through the weights.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we can do that. For example, experimental setting, we allow for that. So, and, yeah, yep, yep. And also, if you are the designer of the game, delta is a measure that you can control too. If you're designing, yep. I don't know, but people talk about the Lipschitz game. It's more or less like this, to some extent. Yep, and we have a control on that, and yeah. And if you see this, the UIs, they don't have any parametric assumptions. So the linear case is straightforward will be the intensity of the network on theta 2 will be there. But you can compute equilibrium exploiting this idea of variational inequality. And it's something that I didn't include, which is coming from variational inequality, is this idea of studying stochastic variational inequality in a context of games, network game, and the motivation is financial network, for example. And some of these ideas also are present there too. So how to you're bounding the lowest eigenvalue or the P function condition essentially with those numbers. But yeah, that's what is going on. And yeah. So thank you for the question. Thank you.
Potencial, después perturbado también, supongo, ¿no?
Claro.
Ahí podía usar, ahí tenía un
Porque
programa de optimización.
sí, bonito.
Ahí tenía 4.
Sí.